Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Um, Thank you for taking the time to join us on this webinar. Um, we're just at the hour, so I'm going to give people a couple of minutes before we start the session. Um, David, I'm adding the presentation to the screen, so I'm presuming you can see the screen and hear me and see me okay. Okay, perfect. Whilst we have people joining the session, a little bit of housekeeping, guys. So the session's being recorded. It will be sent to everybody after this. So you will have the recording in case you want to review anything. For any Q&A, just add your questions to the chat and we'll pick this up towards the end of the session. So yeah, just want to give people a couple of minutes and then we'll start the session. Okay, just a minute more and then we'll kick off. I can see some familiar names joining, so welcome to the session, guys. And thank you again for your support. And to all those that have joined, we run this monthly ERP reporting series where we pick a topic, pick a report, and start building concepts around it, whether it's on Zap BI, Power BI, or Excel. We talk about how AI can help in there as well. And fingers crossed, come the new year, we will start showing you AI as well, interacting with the data we're going to create for these ERP reports. So exciting times, and I can't wait. So yeah, very keen for that. All right, we're 2 minutes past, so I'm going to start the session. So today's ERP reporting series session is around sales forecast. So we are at that time of year, year end for some people, or going into budgeting and forecasting worlds, and this becomes a really important topic which people do for their businesses. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about some forecasting methods. The prerequisite here is that you have an ERP of some sorts, a finance system, an ERP, and generally we cover topics relating to businesses that are more around distribution and manufacturing, so some sort of stock. But you could easily take that into a professional services environment with, sales and customers and product SKUs or service SKUs, and use that contextually here as well. So it would kind of liaise the same way. So we're going to talk about some forecasting methods that are generally out there in the ERP world. We're going to talk about why does it fail or where does it fail. We're going to then talk about what good looks like. We're going to talk a little bit about the role of AI into that, because everywhere AI is coming or already there or already being used. So it is very important on these topics. Where do we see AI fitting in? Because that's where everything is going. And then I'll pass over to my colleague David to do a live demonstration of this on some reports and dashboards that he has built using these concepts. So the best practices around forecasting or the forecasting methods used generally. So generally we see two of these in businesses that we work with. So either it is heuristic elements where you're looking at last year and adding a percentage to it, or there's a sales rep, their judgment or budget, allocation, and so on and so forth. So it is a quick thing, but generally becomes inaccurate. And if sales reps keep changing what their gut feel is, then it's hard to audit as well. And in terms of how did you put it together. Then you come to some of the traditional, time series kind of models like moving averages or weighted moving averages, and use those. And that help further, but there are gaps sometimes if the underlying data for these time series analysis or historical data analysis are not correct. And then generally, this is more around the retail side of businesses, but you get some, you use some regression models, linear or multiple regressions. Arima and Sarima is more retail related, but essentially you're looking at demand drivers. So, there are elements of seasonality like Christmas or some other festivals that are there, and your product or business works around that. I mean, we've got a client called Smithies. Their business works heavily around the Halloween period. So those kind of key demand drivers kind of drives their forecast as well. So you look at those things on how you traditionally kind of build these forecasting methods. Where these methods fail, they are at two elements. One is at the data level, and then secondly, it's at the modeling or purely data modeling element of it or process level. So with respect to data, a lot of the times it's essentially what does the past data relate to the current data. Product name changes, SKU changes, new SKUs come in, something's become obsolete and not changed in the data, and it's still appearing, and so on and so forth. Sometimes there are data quality issues with respect to how you have your data. Simple things like a customer name. You've got three accounts for them. One is in capitals, one is in small letters, one is in between. Those duplicates and merging of that is required to form a view of that customer when you're putting that forecast in there. There may be inconsistent data. You may have last year and then the year before, or we've properly didn't track or could not track because of gaps in the system itself or the application, that you have only half the data. Then how do you predict something or forecast something using half data? Then predominantly this is where a tool like us, a data warehouse concept tool like us, works. And I don't know why I said concept. We are a data warehouse. Apologies. But this is where when the data is spread across multiple modules, so sales, AR, inventory, and you're trying to combine that into one place before you can, build these forecasts into it. And that's where, data warehouse tools like us start to shine amazingly well. And then you have, version histories and, what is the single version of truth in this. If I look at the modeling side of things, you know, product customer hierarchies. Sorry, apologies. Let me just quit this. Um, Spreadsheets, and this is where generally most of the forecasts come in. You take a dump of the data, build it in spreadsheets, and then start rearranging elements as well. So where is the governance of this? What if you have over 1,000 SKUs and you're doing a forecast by SKU, and somebody somewhere changes one percentage element of that data? How do you find that, and how do you make sure something like that, human error, does not happen? So those kind of issues. No audit trail, obviously, in something like that. Then you tend to put BI on top of that, which you already have bad data, and then you visualizing it with BI tool does not mean it will fix it. Um, the other part is then if I want to run some scenarios, what if sales by a particular customer increased by a certain percentage, and what if it reduced? So best case and worst case scenarios. How can I test those? So you need tools that can actually allow you to do that, manipulate with that data, to have that. And then lastly, reconciliation to I've now built the forecast, I've got the actuals. How do I compare on an ongoing basis, day to day, week to week, month to month, and year to year? How do I compare? And can I have some alerts if I know I'm not going in the direction, so I can go work on that and focus on that to get it in the right direction, those kind of things. Okay. What does a great trustworthy forecast really look like? So this is where you have clean data, harmonized, historical information around sales. So this is sales orders, sales invoices, those kind of things. Then you have a data model that has elements of the information that we need, and we are focusing on stock and product and customer and calendar. So information around that is what we have. So our focus today with the sales forecast is forecast by customer, forecast by product, and forecast on time. So those are the three things we're going to look at. Then scenario planning, like I said, best case, worst case. If I changed a certain element in my forecast, how would that impact those things? And obviously variance analysis with actual, so you can stay ahead of the curve and understand in real time or near real time what's your position of the business around it. And then lastly, can the users actually self-serve this? And possibly AI will come into that as well. But can you actually interact with your data as a business user rather than having IT or needing IT's help to do stuff like this? So that's where, a trustworthy forecast comes in, where once you have the data model in a format you can use, then Excel, Power BI, or Zap BI, those three tools in our case, can allow you to do these things. Okay. Um, where does AI enhance or come into enhancing things? And there are three high level elements where AI can play a huge role. So one is pattern intelligence. So this is where elements of prediction starts to come in. So seasonality, demand cycles, previous trends. You may have Christmas as a peak period, or Halloween as a peak period, or Easter as a peak period. What happened last 3 years? What can it impact now? I have a very interesting use case with a client where they are retail stores. So pre-COVID, they have over 300 stores in the country, and they want to see what is their sales or forecast their sales against what it was pre-COVID, and has it reached that or gone even beyond that? So that's a really interesting data comparison. You're not comparing this year versus last year. You're comparing this year versus 2019, which was really interesting for what they're trying to do. So spot changes in behavior, understand life cycle patterns for a product. Do your product SKUs last 10 years, 20 years, or every 3 years there's a change because it's the nature of the business? Something like fashion, as an example, as an industry, it's things have to change on an ongoing basis. So depending on the type of business you have, and we've got a few customers who are in fashion, one of them being Crew Clothing. Um, then where AI can help again is SKU level accuracy. So can I, based on my sales orders, based on the forecast that I have, can I predict the demand that is coming depending on the accuracy of my forecast and the actuals against it? And yes, you can. So those kind of elements start coming in. Handling irregular or intermittent demands coming in. Um, and again, grouping similar SKUs or customers into one for stability purposes. So streamlining forecast and demand together to fulfillment with what is coming through the actual as well, and whether it's in line with the forecast year to date and not total to date kind of situation. And then lastly, AI can come in identifying anomalies, flagging elements that are not in the right way or shape or form. So I've got a forecast, say, for a particular customer to grow this account by 10%, and 9 months uh, right now, and it's gone through the detail and the data, and I've not even grown. I've actually reduced the account, and based on previous history, there is no trend of them buying in the last 2 months of the year. I'm just giving you a hypothetical example, but AI can start coming into those kind of things and highlighting risk, flagging situations like this, or resolving certain bottlenecks that it may see, that you have a forecast of achieving something, you have a demand with the sales orders, uh, expected sales orders to come in, but based on the product availability or on hand situation and the lead times from the suppliers, you may not be able to fulfill that prediction and that forecast, and have a shortfall in what you're going to achieve in actuality. So those kind of warnings can come in as well. Each of these are probably very interesting and may take a little time and little element to set up and everything for sure. But at a high level, working on something like these, if you can get those things arranged, then I'm sure AI can help in a huge way if the data is correct on that. Okay. I'm going to now pass over to David. So David, I'm going to stop sharing and remove my screen from the stream. So over to you, David. I can't hear you right now, by the way, David. And again, for people on the call, if you have any questions, please put it on the chat and we'll pick it up towards the end of the session. Yeah.
Super.
Over to you, David.
Just want to confirm, can you see my screen?
No.
Not as yet.
So let me just click on plus.
See?
So yeah, I've added it to the stream. So yeah, I can now see the screen. Can you say something again? Because your audio is a bit lower.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's
It is
perfect. So if you
going
can
to
just increase the volume slightly, and then I think we'll be
be
fine.
okay. If not, let me try to change my audio. It was working
Yeah, if you
fine.
can, because you're moving in and out. So unless you're very close to your mic, we can't hear you properly.
Is it better?
Say, yeah, this is much better.
Much better. Okay, perfect. Super. So
Okay.
I think the microphone is not working.
Right.
Well, thank you, Rohit, for introduction, and thank you everyone for joining. I'm genuinely excited to be here today to share with you this, which I consider to be very interesting use case. And today's session is inspired on on some work that I have been doing with some customers on recent proof of concepts, which I'm quite exciting to share with you. So I hope you also find this very valuable as I do. So the name of the webinar as we are talking about is Build a Sales Forecast that you can actually trust. And the reality is that sales forecasts normally fail, not only because we have the numbers wrong and because we have guesses, it's also many times because we are not looking at the entire picture. We are overlooking at many parts of the information. And if we think about this dashboard that I'm going to be showing you today, an organization is a complex entity with complex relationships. And many times we need to see further. We need to see more than just the sales. We need to see at the supply chain. We need to see at supply shortages, at capacity constraints that we might have in terms of the providers, quality issues. We might also see internally it in our production team to see production bottlenecks, if there are any backorder issues, inventory problems, right? We talked a couple of weeks back about shortages and overstocking. But we can also have issues in terms of the demand. There may be fluctuations in the demand that we need to be aware and that we need to be able to anticipate. So the challenge, and this is the business problem that I want to set up today. The problem is that data is in silos, right? And here's where a data warehouse really shines, which is connecting data from multiple places, not only from sales orders, from jobs and work orders, from shipping, picking, the delivery side, the delivery cycle, sales targets that many times we have it in Excel, and we want to just extrapolate that information here along to identify which are those risk signals that can help us, get a much more accurate forecast where we can get a forecast that we can actually really rely on, right? So, as I mentioned, these reports are very much inspired in recent proof of concepts that I have been working on. If we think about sales orders, uh, work orders, the first thing that comes into our mind is those a manufacturing process. But what I really find fascinating about this is that this scenario is very versatile, and we can actually extrapolate these same scenarios in many other industries. In projects, we can do it. We can do it in consulting firms, contracting, professional services. So basically every scenario where we have a pipeline and we have commitments and deliveries, I guess this webinar is likely to fit in. So again, for the context of this, I'm going to focus mostly on manufacturing, but I believe that these concepts are basically very much applicable to many other industries. Super. So now, I'm going to concentrate my attention on this dashboard. So just Rohit, can you just confirm again with me if you can see the dashboard?
Yes. So we are on the executive revenue and forecast overview dashboard.
Amazing. All right, so I want to start first with a big picture. And this is the executive revenue and forecast overview. And this Dashboard is simply designed to answer a very simple question. Are we on track to what we delivered to plan? And on the left-hand side of the screen, where I'm actually hovering my mouse, you can see that this is the annual plan. And this is giving us an immediate overview of how are we actually performing against this yearly plan that we have. So we, on one hand side of the screen, we have the targets. So this is what we committed to deliver in this specific year. And then the green bar, which is 319 million, this is my sales target. Sorry, my what I have actually achieved. This is my actual sales. And the gray section that I see here is my actual gap. So I can see that my gap is 2,223 million, right, in amount. So this is the current revenue gap for the first of the year. Now, as a context here, just so we don't get worried about this data, for this demo database, I just created a scenario, but we are on August 2025. So we still have a couple of months to figure it out and to fix this gap, right? So now I'm applying, and I talked about that on the previous webinar. I'm using a framework to build this dashboard. It's a McKinsey framework called MISI, which is basically breaking down this metric into three clear and non-overlapping components. So I'm breaking down this into some questions. Are we actually executing this consistently? How are we performing against the target? The second question is, okay, how are we building that momentum? Is the demand volatile? Are we hitting our target constantly? Are we growing? And the third one, it's how much revenue is actually truly secured, right? So we are going to break down this gap to analyze where the problem might actually be sitting. So the first chart that I have here, the first ring chart, it's quite simple, and I'm sure we are very, very familiar with this one, which is a year-to-date target achieved. So I can see clearly, very quickly, that 87% of the year-to-date yearly target has been achieved. This is on a year-to-date basis, right? And this is a quick health check for the leadership team. And we are in 87%. And although the numbers seem to be quite reasonable, the reality is that we are behind. And there's a gap that we need to fix. There's a 13% gap that we need to fix. So if I see now on the right-hand side of the screen, I'm breaking down this number, this year-to-date target, into a monthly basis. So I'm breaking down, this is the rhythm of my execution, right? So I'm breaking that first chart by monthly basis, and I can see where the problem might be sitting. So I can see if I'm constantly meeting the targets. I can quickly see some patterns that the first months, I nearly missed the targets on the month of January, March. I was closed. However, March, April, so this bar that we have here, the black bar, this is the targets. So we can see on March, April, and May, we missed the targets quite for a big amount, but it seems that now in June and August, we are trying to build momentum. We are catching up. We're even exceeding targets. We are 109 and 102 above the target. So actually, this is good. And based on these two charts, we can get into a fast, quick conclusion, and we will still analyze this with the rest of the reports. We get the first conclusion that, yes, we are behind the target. We have a weak start, but now we are catching momentum. So now, will that momentum be enough to close that gap? Will we continue to that momentum? What does the history says about this data? And now that brings me to my second section of this dashboard. How our sales compared to the previous year? Are we growing? Are we declining? And what I can see here, very similar to the previous report, we are behind the previous year. So my sales are not looking quite good actually. I'm 88.7 of what I was this year on August to the same year of the previous year, right? August of the previous year. In a very similar fashion, if I analyze my information, I can see very similar patterns. The first 2 months, I had a very good start. I grew. January, February was a quite good period. But in the same way, March, April, my sales dropped. And I'm building momentum in July and August. So is this something that will affect my analytics? Now, is my target accurate? Will I be able to hit my numbers? Now, from here, I can make some assumptions, and I will jump into this by the end of the presentation. But what I want to show you is that we can forecast and we can make these assumptions based on information that we have in the past. What I have here, this is my current sales, this is my targets. And what I'm trying to focus is, are these targets actually realistic? And within the application, we can use even different methods to forecast data. Here I'm showing you a couple of them. A moving average, I have here a seasonality plus growth, which is what Rohit mentioned. So I can, and there are some parameters that I can just bring into place to see, how the data looks like if I increase the seasonality. And I can always have certain variables here to kind of, play with the data. So I'm going to go back later on into this one, but I want to continue answering the different questions, right? So far we know that we are behind of our target. We are behind of the previous year. But now let's bring this into a more realistic scenario. And then let's bring operations into the question. Because many of us, we don't, we have a cash cycle, right? So what I'm showing you in this bar, and this is where I'm bringing that operational feasibility, that revenue coverage that we are going to bring. What I have on the green bar is basically what I have sold today. And we have repetitively seen that we have 319K, thousand million, sorry, in our sales. But let's add a layer of realism here. The cash flow isn't linear. We don't invoice at the moment that we make the sale. Instead, in manufacturing, we start with a sales order. And then once we have a sales order, we need to run a production. And then after we have the production, we might have a picking and shipping part of the delivery. And then after that, we deliver. And after we deliver, then we generate the invoice. So what the green bar is showing us here, this is the invoice amount. That's what has already been recognized at the moment of invoicing. But what we have here, this is basically what is open on sales order. Now, if I go into this chart, and this is where really the data warehouse is starting adding a lot of value, is that future orders aren't just based on committed dates. Expect to deliver these orders on this specific day. We need to adjust some realistic timelines, including delays. So when the production order actually starts, we need to consider also lead times. So if the production order starts in August, well, we need to consider the lead time to allocate the sales order, the lead time to allocate the work order for the picking, for the shipping, to generally have a explicit and a much more accurate view of when I'm expecting actually to invoice this amount, right? So we are integrating the full supply chain. It's not only about when I make the sale, but when I am actually expecting to bring this cash to recognize this revenue into my account. So, so far, if I take into consideration everything that I have here in sales orders, actually my forecast looks quite healthy. So I have 222,000, well, million actually, in open sales order, and the actual gap to hit my overall target is 223 million. So I'm like 1 million behind. It's not that big the difference. I'm quite close. So maybe with some bluebirds or some, and again, this will depend on my cash to cash cycle, I might be able to close this gap, right? Now, the conclusion that I have here, again, is yes, we are behind on target. We are behind the previous year. We have been generating momentum in the last 2 months. It seems like we will continue the momentum because we have a lot in open sales order. It looks strong, it looks healthy, but we need to see actually how healthy are the sales order. So again, the next question is, are we on track? On a high level overview, it seems like we are on track. But what is really happening on the sales order books? And that's where we are going to drill down and break this open sales order, this 222, into a, into a much more granular level. And again, this I am continuing using this MISI framework that I shared with you earlier, where we are drilling down into non-exclusive, non-overlapping components, and I'm breaking down this number to see how these 222 are performing. Now, the first thing is I'm breaking these numbers down by the sales order cycle. I can see of these 222, what hasn't started. So I can see that the vast majority of those sales hasn't yet started. We have a big portion that is still in progress, a small portion that is in peaking, and a small portion as well that is being shipping. We can see how this data looks like throughout the different periods of time, right? And we can analyze and we can bring a drill down into these specific components if we want to, right? Now, this dashboard, obviously, all of these dashboards have more drill throughs. So if we want to break down into each of these components and to analyze where the progress might be having an issue, where I might be facing a supply chain disruption, I can do so, right? So I'm not going to go into this report. I'm going to go back into the previous one. So I know I can see clearly that, yeah, this is what I have secured. There's a lot that I haven't yet started, and I want to see if actually I have anything that's at risk. Now, orders that are on hold. Now, the reality is that suspensions can happen for different reasons. Although we expect to close all of these sales orders, we might always face suspensions in a project, or in this case, in a manufacturing process. There might be some internal holes that can be caused by external people, by inspections. The suspension can be created by a customer, right? Where they need to do some internal processes, or they have changed their mind, or they have changed their priorities. But also the suspension can be because we are out of stock, or there are some orders in the processing that we need to correct. So these suspensions, although in this specific example that I'm creating, the suspension is not that big of the overall open orders that I have. It only represents 2.71%. Well, the reality is that these suspensions are pushing us away from the real gap that we have, right? From the real sales forecasting that we have. So we can still drill through into this to understand what are these. We can see in this database that the previous one is the customer request. But what is important here is to understand what are those reasons for suspending and what are the actions that we can take. So maybe if the customer tripping a suspension, maybe we can do a proactive call Or if we are running out of stock, maybe we can change supplier or find certain substitutes. Or if there's an internal issue, a logistic issue, maybe we can prioritize how are we going to send the product. Or we can try to find different alternatives. But we can start building up strategies to move away from this 2.21, which is affecting my revenue. Now, one thing is what's already suspended, but a lot of the analysis is also about looking ahead. Again, forecasting, when we talk, a lot of the things is about the speculation, but a lot of the data, we have it. And here's where I'm focusing on how can we identify this risk early and how we can take action of this risk before this get into a real problem, before the order gets canceled or suspended. So in here we have low projected costs, or maybe we can expedite a shipment. Maybe we can adjust production schedules or have a closer relationship with the customer to set better expectations, right? And the same thing goes for suspense and sales order, but at risk. If I want to analyze, if I want to understand, okay, I want to see what are these risks, I can again, oops, for some reason ahead is, I can drill down and I can say, okay, we have 0.72% of the orders at risk. And although this is not a big amount, I want to minimize this, right? Because it doesn't matter how small the number is, this is a number that will get us close to my sales target, to my revenue target. So we can see that we have low projected costs. We can play with the data, we can drill them down to see in which weeks I'm facing that specific problem. In this case, I'm breaking down the data firstly based on brands. This could be based on warehouses, on locations, or on countries. And I have a heat map, which is allowing me to analyze quickly where the problem might be sitting. So in this case, for example, if I want to see which are, I can see that this brand, not sure how to pronounce this word, but if I want to see which are the customers that are facing, that are at risk of losing, I can drill down and I can open and I can see, oops, I have an error for a reason. Let me try another one. Not sure if I changed anything. For some reason, I have changed something that it's not allowing me this to work. But let me just open. This might be something that I just last minute changes that I made. I just wanted to show you how this actually look like and the read-throughs that I configured in this one. I can go and analyze information on the lowest level of detail. So where did I have this sales forecast? Anyway, not sure where I have it. But what I was doing there, I was drilling down, analyzing the same information by a customer. Then after I double clicked, I was breaking down this figure by a product. And then after I clicked for the product, I was able to double click into that figure and analyze actually the actual sales order itself, right? So it's that ability to go from a very, very high level of a view dashboard and being able to go to the lowest level of detail. The dashboards as well are iterative, so I can configure relationship if I want to see, okay, this hasn't started, so I'm not quite worried about this. But on shipping, what are the risks that are in these orders that are on shipping? Okay, I can see that the risks are on August, September. I can see which are the key suspension and the key risk drivers for these orders, right? So I can anticipate on that. Now, so far, and I'm going to go into the last resource that I'm going to show. We know that the real revenue gap is not this 967, right? This is what I sold. This is my open sales order. And this is the gap between my yearly target and I am missing. But after analyzing my operations, after having a much more complete perspective of my business, I realized that no, actually my gap is quite higher. I have a suspended amount. I have orders that are at risk that I have identified at this stage. So my overall gap seemed to be something around 8 million, right? So again, all of this is about being proactive. If I take actions, and this is again part of the forecasting, and many of this is where we need to bring some intuition, some experience from the past. But if I do some actions, because the end of goal of this is to do some actions, if I manage to reduce my amount that is on suspense, let's say by 75%, let's see that I am, or 50%, let's see that I am able to reactivate those orders. Well, my gap moved from 8,000 to 5.5 million, right? If I manage to change, or if the risks increase to 1.5, so I can see I'm creating those scenarios. So I can see, if I take certain strategies, what would that impact be on the business, right? So these are some what if analysis that I want to show you. But what I really wanted to highlight is that these reports, this forecasting is looking at beyond my sales. Now, just to finish before I go to the conclusion, I want to go back into this report because many times we will want to use to simply export my sales data, move it into Excel. We can still do a certain forecast in Excel. But inside ZAP, you will also be able to create some high-level what-if analysis. We have some statistical functions like having maximum or minimum, right? We have functions like moving average, which is forecasting how my sales are looking like using a moving average. And here I can change the number of periods that I'm using for this moving average. In this case, the moving average was not the best approach. I just wanted to show you options. But I also have a seasonality plus growth. So in this seasonality, I'm actually analyzing my sales compared to the previous year. So in this case, if I just write, this is my time. If I write 12, I will be actually comparing, seeing my sales, how they look like in the previous year. So I can see that actually the sales, my target, is a simple calculation. It's just my sales from the previous year plus an increase. See how the targets, which are the black bars and the seasonality, it looks quite similar, right? So basically, if I increase the growth of my previous sales, I can see that actually it's not that unrealistic. What I'm just asking this year is to grow like 8%, 10% maybe compared to the previous year, right? So going back, I think it was quite a lot what we explored today. I hope you have enjoyed the content of this webinar. So before I wrap up, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be with us today. We explore together that it's much more than a set of dashboards. It's the way how we are transforming a standard forecasting into something reactive, into something that is more reliable and more actionable, right? And this is really where data warehouse shine. We cannot analyze information in an isolated way. We cannot analyze the data in silos. If we do in that way, we will inevitably miss the real story. But if we connect all those components together, if we bring them into a unified place, we gain something far, far more powerful, more control, and more confidence. So we started this analysis with a big picture, a win track. We compare this against targets, against growth, and then we look into the sales order book to see operational wise what is reliable, if it's healthy, and if it's not, if there are risks, and most importantly, what are the actions that we can take. So a forecast that we can really trust is not only built on assumptions, but it's built on insights and on integrated data. So thank you again for your time. I really hope that you have enjoyed the content, and I will hand over to Rohit for questions.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, David. Thanks for sharing that. Um, so we're going to open up for questions, and I'm just looking at the Q&A section, and I've got someone raise a question where they missed the start of the session, and they wanted to understand what are the various methods we're using here in terms of forecasting. So, David, can you first talk through in your demonstration what forecasting methods you've used? So I think
Mhm.
historical data look and stuff. So can you just walk them through that, please, quickly?
Yes, super. So I'm focusing data mainly based on historical data. I am making focus based on the sales for the previous year, which is a quite high level overview forecast based on information that exists in the past, which is actually shown in this report that I'm showing you. We can use different methods, seasonality with growth. We can use a simple moving average, a multiple moving average, linear regressions to calculate that. But also I'm making a forecast now based on operational reality, looking at what I have today and looking at my lead times and processing times to see if I'm actually going to collect the revenue again. So it's a combination of both. It's a multiple analysis to analyze what I forecast, if it's reliable based on the targets, and also to see if it's achievable based on my operational reality.
Great. Thanks, David. And to add to that question, were you looking at sales by customer, headline sales numbers for by time, so by month, by day, by week, or you were using sales by product, by SKU? What historical information you were using for your sales forecast calculations?
And this in this one was a combination of by date, by customer, by products,
Yeah,
and location. Those were the mainly that where we can break down here the data.
brilliant. Thank you. So hope that answers your question, but basically, generally what we've come across is an historical a forecast created on I did this much sales last year and this is the percentage increase. What would my forecast look like? So in its very simplistic form, or gone granular into by SKU, by customer, by region. So those three and a combination of those. And then on top of that, adding elements like seasonality, weighted average, moving average, those combinations coming into that. So those are usually the forecasting methods we've seen used, and a combination of those we've used in this demonstration as well. Good. So I'm going to give it another minute. There are more questions. So
And also, if there is any topic that you would like to see in future sessions, please write them down, and we will be happy to talk about those topics that you find relevant.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think uh, when we come back in the new year, I think we're keen to look at inventory aging, ideally historical aging as well, and the impact of something like that on a manufacturing and distribution type business. And the other one we are keen on, or David's very, very keen on, is probably his favorite topic, is working capital analysis. So we've done historical AR aging previously and AP, and we want to complete the trio with inventory aging. And then I think we're going to bring that all together into working capital analytics. So yeah, please As ERP users, as business leaders, please throw in ideas if you would like to see what area of ERP reporting you would like to cover in here. And like I said, hopefully next year we can start showing you AI elements coming into it. We recently been testing Fabric and Power BI and Copilot because we produced tabular data models for Power BI. It was quite freaky on our demo data. I could literally interact with the data using Copilot, so I was pretty amazed. And I didn't even need to build a report for that. It was building a report for me, showing me sales comparisons for the last 4 years and so on and so forth. So that was really fascinating. Okay, I've got another comment. Thank you for the overview. Really a powerful tool and provided great insight into type of data and detailed drills from past and overlay present consent. Thank you for the comments and feedback. These are really useful and keeps me and David going for sure. They wanted to ask, is it possible to get a copy of the reporting? 100%. So since you're registered, you will automatically be sent a recording. Please check your junk or spam folder in case you don't receive it in your inbox. But if for some reason you don't, just give us a shout, drop a line to your account manager or me or David, and then we'll send you the recording. We also publish this on our website under resources, and I'm just going to post that link in the section for everybody because this includes all our other um, recordings that we've done as well. So there's inventory in there. There is we did some complex P&Ls, and there we were using our Excel tool. So our Excel Live tool. So I'm just going to share that link in the chat so people can see that as well. There you go. David's obviously ahead of the curve and starting to share our Excel element as well. Okay. Another question. You mentioned AI and its ability to enhance forecasting. How are you bringing AI into this? So where we are going is because we have these semantic data models. So underlying is a data set is a cube. We are finding ways to interact with the data. So we've got two elements here. One is we've tested Power BI and Copilot. So if I put this same dashboard or if I'm able to build this through my Power BI data set within Copilot, looking at the history, Copilot to an extent, and this really depends on how your trend and how secure your trend is. If it is if you can't predict anything, there's no rationale, anything, there's no logic, anything. I mean, no AI tool can do that. But looking at past history, it can give you some elements. Looking at past history, if you said 10% growth or 5% growth by these five customers and a combination of these, what would be the resultant? I would expect those kind of interactions to be possible because on that data set, the measure for or the dimension rather for your customer information, for your SKU information, and for the measure which is your sales amount by these dimensions is possible. So I would expect that information to be easily there. So that's one area. And the other is the detection of where David was talking about these are your this is your forecast, this is your actual, and this is where the trend is leading towards. Where AI would probably I see coming in is in the practicality or the reality of whether that forecast can be realized or not. Where, as an example, for a customer, you've put a forecast of growth by 30%, and you've got 1 month to go, and based on this year's data, it's actually lower than last year data. So if in 11 months you've not achieved this, what's the guarantee in 1 month you will? And looking at the historical years with this customer, this month probably you've never sold anything or sold very limited. So that's where I see AI coming in. So it is a very interesting period. But I think the key would be how do you prompt these questions to the AI natural language engine to interact with your data. I think that's the fascinating part with conversational AI, which we are very, very fascinated with and are looking forward to test it in the new year. Because like I said, Power BI Copilot is ready today, and we are going to talk to key customers early next year to start testing these. So yeah, fascinating times and very keen to see how things start popping up. But anomalies around data, that's where I see AI detection coming in very quickly. So data quality, So you've got three customers with the same name, but one in capital, one in lowercase, and one in between. But it's the same customer, so all sales should merge into one. Those kind of data quality issues I see AI highlighting and detecting very quickly, which is what we are building as well on the data model. Okay, good. I'm just going to give it one more minute and see if anyone else has any questions. No, I don't think so. So, okay, great. Well, thank you all. Thank you again for your time. Hope you enjoyed the session. Would love to get some feedback when you have a chance. And if we don't speak to you during the rest of the year, have a lovely Christmas and festive period and Happy New Year in advance. See you in the new year. Cheers. Take care. Bye.